Hi everyone, and welcome to REDCap 101, the online training. This is our Intro to REDCap course, which focuses on database design, so really building a new project from the ground up. This is the same training that we offer in person, just now moved into an online platform, so you can watch it on your own time, and feel free, of course, to stop, pause, and rewind as necessary, especially when we get into the interactive component where we start building a project. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this email address here, redcap@childrensnational.org. That's the best point of contact if you have any questions when you're working in REDCap. That will go not only to myself, but to all the members of the REDCap support team. So the first one of us that has a chance to field your response will reply to you as soon as we can. We ask you to give us 72 hours to reply to any requests, although we are usually quite a bit faster than that. But we're a relatively small team, and we're assisting more than 1,000 active users in REDCap across Children's National and George Washington University. So please bear with us as we handle your requests. When you signed up for this training, you should have received a confirmation email with a confirmation number, which you can use to generate your temporary REDCap username and password to use for this training. Attached to that email will have been a PDF of these slides, and the first 3 pages of that PDF are an exercise that we'll be doing later on in this training. So just be aware of that and have that ready for when we get to the later sections. So what we're going to cover in this course is first a brief overview of the REDCap features and a very brief history of REDCap. Then we'll talk about the REDCap policies here through the CTSI-CN, which is the Clinical and Translational Science Initiative between, and it's a partnership between Children's National Medical Center and George Washington University. Then I'll talk a bit about the different types of studies that you can have in REDCap and the different project setups. So whether you're kind of doing a classic cross-sectional study or a more advanced longitudinal study. We'll cover some more details about longitudinal studies and survey settings in our more advanced REDCap 102 course. I'll also give an introduction into the basic structure of REDCap, and then what we'll spend most of this training doing is what's typically more of an interactive component where you will all use temporary REDCap usernames and passwords to log into REDCap and create a new project, which will be a data entry form project. And you'll build this new project from the ground up, and I'll be doing that process along with you. So by the end of this training, you'll see how to build a new project, take it through from development to production. You'll get experience with the online designer. We'll briefly discuss the data dictionary, and we'll test the project by doing some data entry, and that'll be the same way that you'd enter real records in your own projects. And then we'll review how to make changes after moving from development mode to production mode. I'll also review user rights and data access groups, and very briefly at the end of the training I'll talk about some data management best practices. So REDCap stands for Research Electronic Data Capture. It is a secure web-based application for building and managing online surveys and databases. It's fast, flexible, easy to use. You don't need to have any coding or databasing background to take advantage of all the features in REDCap. Without you having to do any additional work, it will be available, REDCap's available in a mobile version for smartphones and tablets or in a typical desktop version. You don't have to do anything if you send, for instance, a survey to somebody and they open it up on their desktop. They'll have the desktop version. If they open it up on their smartphone, they would have the mobile version. You're able to, with REDCap, export data to data analysis packages, so it's very easy to export as a CSV that you can then open in Excel or import into R, SAS, Stata, or SPSS. This is a big advantage of REDCap over other tools, especially other survey tools like SurveyMonkey, where exporting the data in a form that's readily analyzed can be quite challenging. You can also set up custom reports in REDCap, so you can create your own queries and filters to generate however many series of reports that you want. And you can use that to subset your projects either by certain study subjects or by just taking a very large project that might have very many fields and questions to create a shorter report that you can view and export the data from only that report. You can also manage a contact list of survey respondents or create survey links within REDCap to distribute surveys, and REDCap has a bunch of built-in tools for that. We focus a bit more on the survey tools in the REDCap 102 training. You're also able to save your data collection instruments in REDCap as a PDF to print. This can be useful for IRB reviews, so you can just save everything to a PDF, print them out, and give them to your IRB. It's also useful in case there's some power outages or internet outages or things like that. You can always go to these PDFs as a backup. There's also some scheduling features built into REDCap and a number of other useful tools. REDCap also has some more advanced features. So it has some validation features which help you do some data quality control. These are basically things that you've probably seen before in other online forms. So there's things like email validation to make sure that somebody's put in a proper email address that has an @ sign and a .com or a .org or a .edu. There's also validation fields for phone numbers, for dates, and so on. REDCap also has calculated field options, so it can do some math and calculations for you. Although I would recommend generally collecting the raw data and doing those calculations yourself in Excel or another tool, but it's possible to have REDCap do them for you. You can also upload files to REDCap. There's some branching logic features. There's an API for people that have a bit more coding background and want to take advantage of the API to push and pull records. You're able to do that. You're also able to set up some data queries and to use things like piping. Piping is where if you have collected a participant's name, you could pipe that into a field to customize it. You may have seen this in a lot of fundraising emails that you've gotten where they'll say, hello, Jane. They're piping in Jane from a variable that they've collected. You could also do that in REDCap to personalize things. And the major strength of REDCap is it was designed from the very beginning to comply with HIPAA regulations. So there's built-in user rights controls. I'll show you how to take advantage of those. Which just means you can set what features and what data access different members of your study have. And there's also a built-in audit trail for data security and tracking. So any change that it's made in any REDCap project is automatically put into a log. And you can go back at any point to see that, and that log can't be modified. So you know that a new record was created at this date and time. It was later edited by this username. This username exported some data from your project, and so on. All of that is kept in the audit log. And for those of you that may be working with FDA funded studies, REDCap is 21 CFR Part 11 ready. However, we haven't been formally audited by the FDA, which is required to be completely 21 CFR Part 11 compliant. So that is something to keep in mind. And if you have questions about that, feel free to email the REDCap support team at redcap@childrensnational.org. Okay, here's our very brief history of REDCap. REDCap was created in 2004 at Vanderbilt University by a team led by Dr. Paul Harris. In 2006, the REDCap Consortium was started. And in 2009, Children's National joined the REDCap Consortium. The REDCap Consortium is made up of a variety of different institutions and specialists at those institutions that work in REDCap, ranging from non-technical administrative support to leading informatics specialists. And one thing I want to note here is that each institution typically has what's called its own instance of REDCap. So if you're working with somebody at who's working on a project at Boston University and they're using REDCap, and you're using REDCap here, that doesn't mean you'll have access to each other's projects, because chances are they're using an instance of REDCap that's hosted at Boston University, and you're using the instance here that's hosted as part of the CTSI. So if you want to collaborate on each other's projects, you'll need to have access to the same instance. So if they wanted to work with you, they'd have to contact us at redcap@childrensnational.org and ask for a username and password to use to log into our instance of REDCap so they could collaborate with you on a project, or vice versa if you wanted to access there. So it's something to keep in mind, because it's not always apparent when you're working on large multi-institutional studies where a given project exists on whose server, and how to get access to that. So keep in mind that, each institution typically has its own instance of REDCap. Okay, getting back to the history now. In 2020, REDCap is used very widely across the world in 137 different countries, more than 4,000 institutions, over 1 million users, nearly 900,000 projects, and it's been cited over 9,000 times in research articles. Of course, one of the great things about REDCap here at the CTSI is that it's free to REDCap. It's free to consortium members. It's free to anybody here that has an affiliation with Children's National or GWU.